Hey, Tom Rabbit! I hope you got this for your recording. Hey, YouTube out there. Tom Rabbit likes to record these. Hey, Tom Rabbit!
Okay, boys and girls, here's the setup. So, I was listening to Darth Dawkins, and he says, "Oh, I gotta go. I have this debate with Dr. Kenny Rhodes on Praise I Am's channel." And I said, "What?" And immediately, my interest was piqued, because nobody wants to hear him ask some atheist, God does not exist because, or, argue about agnosticism is incoherent for an hour. Nobody wants to hear that anymore, right? It's boring. So this is an interesting debate because Darth never puts himself in a situation where he's debating against another Christian, right? Almost never, right? So there's not going to be any of that stuff, right? He's just going to have to get right down into the meat and potatoes about their disagreements. He's not going to be able to obfuscate the bunch of like, well, how can you even logic or something like that? Because they both think that logic comes from God, right? That's just all just completely irrelevant. So they're going to be debating on Van Til presup. Okay, cool. This ought to be interesting. So who's Kenny Rhodes? All I know is that he used to be Smokey Saint's friend. Smokey Saint is no longer on the scene. Smokey Saint used to be tight with Praise I Am. So already, and they had a huge following out. So already there's like this really interesting social dynamic. And you're wondering how this is going to go. So here's some credentials for Kenny Rhodes. Master of Divinity, Doctor of Education, PhD in Apologetics and Systematic Theology. So what I'm gonna do, the debate, well, the video is pretty long. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over all the good parts, and I'm just gonna leave everything else out, so you don't have to listen to the whole thing. So let's go ahead and get started.
Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to present this Van Tilian colloquy. Both of these gentlemen are ardent defenders of the faith. We have Darth, who is a notorious gladiator against atheists on several social media platforms. And we have Dr. Kenny Rhodes, who has published several works on Thomistic Christianity. And he has, he's went against prolific atheists such as Matt Dillahunty. So good evening, gentlemen. Thanks for being here. I'd like this discussion to be free-flowing and organic, but would you guys want to give it like a slight introduction, quick introduction, or you guys just want to jump into it? It's up to you.
Well, I'm flexible. Yeah, I'm flexible. I always do good off of questions to open the door in my.
I can't. Why is Darth doing this debate? The only thing I can think of is that he fancies himself really knowledgeable about Van Til, and so there's going to be a debate about Van Tilian presuppositional apologetics. Maybe his ego just told him, it's like, oh, I have to participate in this.
Yeah.
ADHD brain.
And the chat's full already. I get to see everyone back.
I'm sure it's filling up with the atheist trolls.
Oh yeah, they're gonna be here. Tom's already here. Kent.
They have to get their keyboard warrior fix.
Freak praise wins. No, yeah, the I am wins absolutely. I guess what I could do is pose a question. We can go from there. Let you guys direct it. I might, be in the background and just to aid and guide the discussion a little bit. If I don't think there's going to be over talking any of that nonsense, but I'll be here.
This is called foreshadowing, guys. I don't think there's going to be any of that over talking or anything like that, right? Okay.
Just in case. So basically, there's two camps of thought. There's the Thomistic evidentialist approach, and then there's the Van Tillian approach. And
okay, could you hold on a second? Mrs. Whitmere is making a comment. Praise, could you mute Kenny right now, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just mute Kenny. You know, because Miss Whitmore says how long before Darth asks, you know, Praise to mute Kennedy. So I thought we'd get that out of the way.
Uh-oh. We're muting Kenny here. He's not going to be able to speak.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I struck first.
Darth,
okay, there you go, Miss Whitmere. Does that make you happy?
More foreshadowing. This is hilarious. So usually what happens when like a bunch of these people get together is they start making a bunch of jokes about whatever criticism is levied against Darth. So something like you know, anyone who disagrees with Darth, he mutes them, or he demands they be muted. So usually what happens, they just continuously make sarcastic comments about, haha, oh wait, shouldn't I be asking for you to be muted, Dr. Kenny Rhodes? And then they laugh, and they both laugh, and they like, you know, try to say that this is basically an invalid criticism, and they poke fun at it. But as we're gonna see, it might not be the case. Haha, he's laughing too. See,
already the trolling here, but that was awesome, Darth. But there are.
See, Kenny's also laughing. It's like, haha, it is funny how, like, you know, you're this tyrant and you overtalk people, and haha, that's so funny that people say that, right? Let's see what happens.
Two camps of thought: the Van Tillian camp, the Thomistic evidentialist camp. And I mean, it seems like there could be disagreements there. And like, what would you guys think at like the starting point of an apologetic? Is it proper to be like the evidentialist approach, or do you think the Van Tillian approach is better? Do they negate one? You know, like, how would you guys respond to some of that stuff?
I'll let Kenny go first because he has better credentials than I do.
No, like Darth cares about credentials.
Darth is my grandfather, so I was going to let him go first.
Darth doesn't care about credentials. In fact, he'll use credentials when it's convenient for him. Like, you know, he'll cite William Lane Craig or something, and he's got credentials. And then when someone has credentials and it's not favorable to him, he'll use it as an insult, similarly to how he does with age, right? So what he does with age is like, says, how old are you? Well, if you're young, then you're written off as being dumb and, you know, childlike, and he hand waves what you have to say. And if you're old, then how can you be that old and be this stupid, right? It's going to just be the same thing. In this case, it's going to be like, oh, if you have all these credentials, how could you be so dumb? You should know all this.
Oh, goodness. Ask the question one more time there, Praise.
So, like for as a starting point in apologetics, would you prefer Van Tillian apologetics, or would you prefer the evidentialist Thomistic idea of apologetics? I'm trying to figure out, like, both sides. Do they intersect? Is there distinctions? And like, what do you disagree with, Kenny, with the Van Tillian approach? If you could lay that out, that'd be great.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think that it's the foundation upon which we start off from. I think it is a tool in the toolbox. And as far as starting off with, you know, knowledge, I think we have to start with sense perception and work from there. So I'm a good Aristotelian and Thomist in that sense. So it just gets the order backward from a Thomistic point of view.
Okay, shots fired. So that's the first word that probably Darth is hearing and doesn't like, saying backwards, right? It's implying that Darth has got things backwards, right? Not enough to set him off yet, but I'm sure he doesn't like that wording.
Well,
yeah, go ahead,
go ahead. Yeah, I think we can take anything an unbeliever says and we can use it apologetically. And I don't think apologetics is exclusive to evangelism. I think that they significantly overlap, and we can use anything that they say to then juxtapose it with God's revelation, either in general revelation or in special revelation. And then once they reject the presentation of God's revelation, then we can just show them apologetically that they're not in a position to say anything, okay, given their model of reality. But just so people in the audience know, presuppositionalists are not opposed to presenting evidences. It's just that we want evidence to be presented in such a way that we don't either purposefully or inadvertently capitulate to unbelievers' false beliefs, right? So Van Til was very evidences, but sometimes people, and this is no reference to Ken here, but that sometimes Van Til's critics have misconstrued his criticism of usual apologetics as that he's against the presentation of evidences. And there's even a great small book on it. You can find it floating on the internet called Van Til and the Use of Evidences. And it explains how Van Til is pro-evidences. But the evidences have to be invoked and presented as a package deal in a presuppositional sense.
What would you say to that, Kenny? Do you think, I heard from the evidentialist side that they believe that atheists and believers they're neutral. They start on a neutral ground. Is that how you see it, Kenny, or do you actually see there is no neutrality? Is that something you agree with Darth with?
No, that's where we would disagree. I would say on the basis of the Imago Dei in us, I can approach any person on the street and they don't have to acknowledge the grounding ontologically as to why they know. They just have to understand that everything is governed by, law of non-contradiction, identity, excluded middle, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so this is, not really typical of how Darth interacts with Christians. Not really used to this type of thing. People saying like, look, I disagree with you. And he just elaborates on exactly how he disagrees. So this is good, right? We want to see what happens here.
So many non-believers have come to the fact that law of non-contradiction governs our perspective of reality. And of course, the Thomists would say the law of identity is what God sees from, because God sees things as they are. We cannot see everything as they are in themselves, per se, notum, as they say, but we can deduce what essences are. So I would say our own limitations don't allow us to start the way a presup demands that all human beings start. That, to me, whether somebody is a believer or a non-believer has nothing to do with the way that I can reason with them with evidences and for the gospel.
Ooh.
So you would grant them that there are certain universals that don't require referencing the necessity of God?
Well, even Calvin said he didn't know where knowledge of self or knowledge of God started first. I would say we have to start with knowledge of self. We cannot start with knowledge of God.
Well, Van Til would, and I'm no expert on Van Til, I'm still learning. He would say that we can start proximately.
Darth was kind of shook by that quote of Calvin.
With our self-consciousness and our sense perception, but that will either that proximate starting point will either be reckoned as creaturely or as not creaturely.
Everything's creaturely.
Well, not from an unbeliever's perspective. So when they are focusing on their proximate starting points of their self-consciousness and their sense experience, they reckon that these states are standalone without the necessity of deriving from God, which is a false belief.
Yeah, I'm not following too much what you mean by that.
Yeah, ditto.
In a biblical worldview, I'm sure you agree that no one can be neutral toward God, right?
Well, are we talking about our will, or are we talking about our ontology, the way we know things epistemologically?
About in the entirety of.
And now you're starting to see that Dr. Rhodes is sort of like approaching these types of discussions just on a much more rigorous level than Darth, right? Darth probably doesn't even really have an answer ready for in what sense he meant right there. Let's see what he says.
Of their person, of their self-consciousness. One is either going to be acknowledging God at a certain point in neurological development, or one will refrain from acknowledging God as their creator with respect to every fact. Do you think that there's a middle ground?
There's absolutely a neutral ground on which we stand as creatures, as human beings, and an unbeliever doesn't have to acknowledge that they're created in God's image for me to have a starting point and a ground that's common to them. And we have to start from our limitations. We are creaturely. Even God.
I agree with you that there's common ground because we're.
So this is something interesting because thing about Darth is that you can have sort of a cordial conversation with them, but one of the things that you can't really do is really hard disagree. Like Dr. Rhodes is saying things like, absolutely you can be neutral. That's not conducive to having a long conversation with Darth. He'll freak out.
As you said, the Imago Dei, the made in the image of God, but there's a difference
their
between
acknowledgement. I was just going to say their acknowledgement of that fact has nothing to do with their as a creature made in the image of God.
Well, Van Til would agree with you in my understanding of Van Til. But there can be common ground because we're both made in the image of God, and there are certain fundamental mental states that they cannot do without. But that although there's common ground because we're made in the image of God, there is not neutral ground. One will either conceptualize and invoke states of affairs as creaturely, either explicitly or implicitly, or not. Okay, so I'm applying the law of excluded middle.
This is interesting because he's actually worked in the same discussion that he has with atheists, right? Agnostic comes into, the clubhouse or wherever and starts talking to Darth about being agnostic. He'll say the same thing, can't be neutral, right? But there's all this stuff you got to get through in order to have the discussion about what they're having. What he's talking to Dr. Kenny Rhodes about this now. You would have to get through all sorts of stuff just to have this conversation, like where does logic come from and stuff like that. Let's see what happens.
That's where I'm thrown off, I think, in that last statement.
Okay. Okay, why?
Oh, I'd just like to maybe vet it out a little more so I could understand, in what sense you're agreeing and in another sense that you're not. Because it sounds like we agree, but then you say something that I'm not quite getting, what it would be from an unbeliever's perspective. Who cares? They might think, they're a lollipop or whatever, but they could still, we could still say that they have those faculties that are there that allow them to reason.
I agree
generally.
with you.
Yeah,
that's not in dispute. So
yes, that's what I'm saying. We agree. Yeah.
So I think that in these kinds of discussions, some people, and not implying that of you, will confuse common ground with neutral ground. And Van Til makes a distinction about this. We definitely have common ground with unbelievers because they're made in the image of God. They're living in God's world. Okay. And of course they operate according to the laws of logic. They can't do otherwise unless they want to be insane. So we have common ground there, but there's a difference between common ground and that there being neutral territory. So in the Van Tilian sense, there isn't a neutral territory because everything is God's. When Romans 1 says God has made them to know of their creatureliness, even in their own self-consciousness, then they're not neutral. They're at enmity with God. Okay, so that would be the Van Tilian view in my eyes.
Right. And I don't mean this to be offensive, but that actually, what you just took me through and explaining that we have common ground, but not, and neutral, that seems to be a stumbling block because you're saying things that don't make sense.
This is getting worse. You can see how it's getting worse, he said. I don't mean to be offensive. That was the first strike. Second strike, stumbling block. Darth don't like hearing that either. And strike 3 was that don't make sense. Yeah, this is not good. This is not going good.
You know,
What doesn't make sense?
Your whole
You see that? See that? I knew he would get triggered by that.
statement, and I don't mean
Well,
to be
that's a
offensive,
generalization. You're going to have to give me specifics.
Well, I guess the whole thing didn't make sense. If you could nail it down, why the laws of logic can ground us as human beings, and I can communicate with any human being on that level, regardless if they acknowledge where those laws of logic come from.
Oh, okay, that's a good point.
How does that? How does in the world does that change anything except go to them, say, hey, you know, these are evidences that seem to fall in line. You know, they're explanatory power and scope. You know, give to the weight of evidence that this is a more probable conclusion. I just don't see the necessity to go into what you just gave me.
Well, because they're made in the image of God, they're going to their foundational beliefs, which are God inculcated and God sustained. They cannot jettison that. Okay. So
well,
that's
it seems like you're trying to disciple them before you evangelize them. You're trying to disciple them in epistemology to get them saved. Well, that's what it sounded like to me. So if that's the wrong impression, please.
Can you feel the tension building? Guys, can you feel it? Because I feel it. I feel it.
No, what I'm trying to say is Van Til, whether you agree with him or not, Van Til is clear to distinguish between common ground and neutral ground. Okay? Common ground are those things that are operable in terms of their fundamental mental states that they can't jettison. Okay, that there are certain fundamental ways that God made us to think that we can't get rid of. Right?
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
All right. So that's the common ground because we're in God's world.
Right.
And there are certain fundamental ways that God made us and the believers to think. So we have common ground.
So you're saying conclusions are not neutral?
No, what I'm saying
judgments aren't neutral.
Because we're made in the image of God and we're operating in terms of the basic principles, in terms of our mental states, that's the common ground that we're operating in from God's world. But setting that aside, okay, where you and I would agree upon that.
Yeah, yeah.
The Van Tilian approach is that there's not a neutral territory with the unbeliever, because everything that they conceptualize, they are not conceptualizing it as creaturely. They are conceptualizing.
Okay, that's where I'm losing it. Why are they not doing it as creatures? Because they are creatures. So are they deify themselves?
No, they are creaturely, but they are not. They are not acknowledging on a moment-to-moment basis the creaturely status of either their self-consciousness, sense perception, or any other fact around them.
I don't think people walk around like that, to be honest.
You're right, because they're at enmity with God.
No, but I'm saying the Van Tilian explanation of how people walk around, that just doesn't seem to be my experience. In pastoring and talking to hundreds and thousands of people, they don't walk around like that.
Okay, so do they walk around? Are they constantly making themselves aware that, let's say, their car keys that they're holding in their hand, the car they drive, the bread that they eat, that all of these things are instituted and sustained by God, that everything is creaturely? Do they do that?
Why would they be worshiping when they're unbelievers? That is the only thing
I'm asking you what they do.
They try to live day by day and struggle. They have problems. They don't even think about this stuff.
Are they acknowledging the creatureliness of every fact that they conceptualize and think about that is not God? Are they categorizing it as creaturely?
No, but does a fish walk around? No, hold on. Right. Does a fish walk around or swim around?
Oh, there's the first time that he had to put his foot down and say, hold on, let me finish.
Around contemplating that it's in water all the time and that it's a fish. Hold on, stop. It's not a category error, it's an illustration.
Yeah. Yeah. A fish
Yeah,
can't.
so
Fish is not capable of abstract reasoning.
dude, it's you ever heard the saying that if you want to know what it's like to be wet, don't ask a fish?
Dude, that might be irrecoverable. We're just getting too hostile here. I don't know how much longer Darth can be on good behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm trying. Yeah, but it speaks of a truth. That means that when we are in our context, we do not have the ability to step outside of that context, the immediate context. Our creatureliness bounds us to the creaturely world. We have no ability to release ourselves from that.
Okay. In a Ventilian, have you read any of Van Til's works?
Oh, sure. I studied under John Whitcomb, who was a student of Dr. Van Til.
Oh, okay. What have you read of Van Til's works?
Well, I have all.
Guys, it's time for quiz show. It's time for quiz show.
Of his library, I've listened to hundreds of hours of him. I have his Christian apologetics. I have his epistemology stuff. I have
all of it. Have you read those?
I just said I did. I haven't read the whole thing, no. But I do know that he said that an unbeliever can't even understand what a cow is or cowness without first presupposing God, which I think is lunacy.
Well, I don't think.
Have you read that?
Lunacy. That's not going to rub him the right way.
Yes. Yeah, I have.
Okay. Could you explain that?
I don't think you're understanding. I don't think you're understanding Van Til. Okay.
So I studied under a Van Tilian scholar who studied under Van Til, and you're telling me I don't understand Van Til?
Fine. Well,
okay. So I'm telling you that a cowness, that a person cannot. Van Til said a person cannot understand what the essence of a cow is unless God is presupposed. Okay. Now that's really
right.
Lunacy. It's a lunacy.
No, it's not lunacy, and I'll tell you why. Okay.
Okay.
So from Van Til's perspective, now I'm not disparaging you that you haven't read any of his work.
No, I didn't say that. I said I've read many of them, and I've listened to hundreds of hours of him. That's what I said.
So okay, I'm still.
I said I didn't read all hundreds of books that I have of Van Til. I have his entire library, and I've studied it topically. So you're not going to be able to pull on me the crap you do with people. Oh, you're not well read.
Oh, okay. We're not recovering from this.
I'm very well.
I think you're being a little rude now. I think you're being a little rude with me right now.
I am. Because I see you bullying people all the time, dude. I'm not going to let you do it.
Listen, sir, I'm being very cordial with you.
I have seen you be very mean.
Why are you over talking me?
Because why are you under talking me?
Would you please not over?
Yeah, would you please mute me, praise?
Okay.
There you go.
That's a callback. That's what's called a callback.
Is this how it's going to go, Ken?
Yeah, if you misrepresent what I say,
I didn't misrepresent you. I'm telling you what my
shall I do it one more time? I said I own his whole libraries. I've listened to hundreds of hours of his lectures. I haven't read the whole thing, and then you just said, "I'm sorry if you haven't read Van Til. I'm sorry you don't understand him." That is not honest, dude.
Okay, well, please don't accuse me of dishonesty here. I am coming to the conclusion based upon what you're telling me, based upon my readings of Van Til, that you don't quite understand Van Til like you think you do, in my opinion. Now, you obviously disagree. It's not intended to be insultive.
Okay,
that's
fine.
That's
Fair
my
enough.
view. Okay,
fair enough. Fair enough.
Now, recover. Let's see if we can maintain now. To be fair, Darth is being pretty well behaved so far. Let's see what happens next.
Can you tell me what is in Van Til's view, what is the alternative to facts being creaturely?
Brute facts, and he didn't believe in brute facts. Right. Is that what you're talking about?
Okay. Now, what are the metaphysical consequences of brute facts? What are the epistemological consequences of brute facts from Van Til's point of view?
Here we're doing more quiz show. This is just it's just egos at this point, just trying to fight with Van Til knowledge, but more Darth than Dr. Rhodes.
That I'm not aware of.
Okay, well, this is a key part of Van Til's epistemology.
I'm here to learn, but I would like to
Okay.
know why I can't why say one of the atheists in the audience can't understand what a cow is unless they presuppose God.
I'm going to explain to you. Okay.
Okay.
Van Til, we'll say, for example, there was another theologian who offered a similar type of critique, and Van Til responded by saying, unbelievers can count, right? Because they're made in the image of God, but they cannot account for counting, okay? Because counting requires a system, okay? But they have no system that they can ground. Now, you correctly stated that the alternative to facts being creaturely is that they would be brute. And you tell me if you disagree with this. Van Til said that facts would be brute, and I'm paraphrasing. They would be brute is that they are invoked to be or possess actuality, but the actuality is not accounted for either innately in terms of it being absolute and self-contained, nor is it accounted for as to what it is, can be, and cannot be externally. Okay? So that's in my words, what the Van Tilian view of bruteness is. So Van Til would say brute facts are mute facts. Do you recall that?
Not that quote specifically, but the concept.
Okay, so
yeah.
Right. So if you want, I have a Google Drive where I have a copy of the book Van Til's Apologetic, which is Bahnsen's magnum opus representing Van Til's.
I have that. Yeah.
Okay. Have you read that?
I've only skimmed through it.
Okay, I'd recommend that you read it. So, brute facts, according to Van Til, are facts, number one, that are not classified or categorized as creaturely, that they derive and depend upon the mind, the purpose, and the redemptive plan of God. Number two, brute facts are said to exist without any internal or external reason why they exist. So that means then that the fact in question doesn't have any metaphysical intelligibility, because there's no reason as to what or why it is, can be, or cannot be.
Does anybody remember what he's supposed to be explaining to us right now? I thought he was supposed to be explaining why an atheist can't understand what a cow is without presupposing God. Is this, am I wrong?
Right, totally agree. There's no such thing as a brute fact.
So when an unbelievers, like for example, if I were to hurt my ankle and I went to my orthopedic doctor, as an unbeliever, he can know that I have a broken or a sprained ankle using modern technology, but his knowing that is by virtue of God's common grace. But since his ideology, his worldview rejects that, his conclusions based upon his metaphysic are inconsistent with his conclusions. Now, that's
we would say his judgments are inconsistent.
Well, when Van Til says an unbeliever can't know what a cow is, he's talking about he can't know what a cow is with respect to their system that they are deriving, that the facts are derived from. Van Til does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that an atheist, if you walk up to an atheist and you say, what is a cow? And he'll just shrug his shoulder and say, I don't know. Van Til, I can guarantee you, okay, that there won't be anybody who really knows Van Til's writings, okay, who will say that Van Til meant that an unbeliever cannot in any sense, shape of the imagination know what a cow is. What he means is he cannot know what a cow is, or any other fact for that matter, given his metaphysic. Okay? Now, were you familiar?
Yeah, that's where I would disagree. Yeah, and that's where I disagree.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So explain to me what a cow is from an unbeliever standpoint that does not necessitate referencing the necessity of God. So what would a cow be?
Well, from our perspective, I would say look at a dictionary. We all agree upon it, and that's what we call a cow. Now, God's knowledge
I'm not talking
of what
about
a cow.
a definition. I'm saying ontologically, what's a cow then?
That is
remember we're talking.
Yeah,
we're talking about
This is this a real conversation?
what is a cow without reference ultimately to God whatsoever.
It's still
What's
a cow. It's still a cow.
What is it? What is it?
It is still a cow, and that's where I think the Van Tillians.
No, I said, what is a cow?
It.
What is a cow?
Look it up in a dictionary.
Well, you told me that I want you to pretend to be an unbeliever and tell me what a cow is.
Well, I would read it in the dictionary, and
what would that mean?
Well, I don't have it right in front of me. You know,
well, why don't you off the top of your head? I don't know why you're being so cagey here. Just tell me if you believe that unbelievers can know what a cow is without in any way implicitly or explicitly referencing the necessity of God, then tell me how and why an unbeliever can know what a cow is without respect to the acknowledgement of God as creator.
Okay, I'll let.
All right, all you unbelievers, ask yourself, what is a cow? Can you answer that question? Think about it for just a second.
You know, because we discern essences from activities. And when you observe the activity, then you use that as a description of the essence of what a cow is.
Okay, so what you're saying then is there are certain levels of unity among the diversity of things?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so there's no unity among the diversity of things?
Okay. Okay. Let me say it one more time in case I was not clear on it. A cow is a cow is a cow. From our creaturely perspective, we all agree that a cow moves. We could be very specific about that or very general.
Is a cow a category of things?
My knowledge, my epistemology is not, I don't have, that has to have to be unified with ontology. I'll never have perfect knowledge of cowness. Okay, so that means
is cowness a category?
I don't even know what that means. A category of what?
Really?
Yeah.
So a cow is not a category of things?
It is within a category of animals, genera, species. Okay. Sure. Is that what you're talking about?
Right. So we have various level of categories of things among the plurality of things that exist, right? So we agree that there are categories of things?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we can say that categories of things are a type of unification among the diversity of things. Okay.
Sure.
We have unity among diversity.
Right? Yeah, I've written on this. Yeah.
Okay. Now, in order to have unity among the diversity.
Yeah, surely. I've written on this.
Diversity of things.
Yeah, I've written on this, so you don't need to teach me on it, but just make your point if you would.
Yeah, you know what, Ken? I really don't appreciate your rudeness.
you know, if you actually had a little bit of a sense of humor and could actually, Praise, let me do this. You're far too serious.
I do have a sense of humor. You've been quite rude with me a number of times here.
And I've seen you be very rude with unbelievers and you push away from the gospel.
I'm talking about right now, sir.
But
Kenny Rhodes kind of tried to just say he was joking and just he just kind of said lighten up. But Darth wasn't having it.
Talking about right now, and you don't really have.
I'm not being rude to you,
you don't have the moral authority to lecture me about being rude.
Hey Ken, am I being rude to you?
It doesn't matter. I've seen you be rude to hundreds of people. You don't have the moral authority.
I'm not here to bicker with you. I thought I was going to have a mature conversation.
We are.
And all I know is I have not been rude to you. But you have been repeatedly rude with me. I would ask you not to be rude.
I have made sure that you don't start doing things to me that you do to other people because you're not a very kind man.
Have I mistreated you here today?
No, but you've mistreated everybody but me today.
Ken, what you're doing now is you're attempting to poison the well. Okay.
No,
I have not mistreated you.
I said that there's a difference. I said don't lecture me. I said don't lecture me.
You know what?
Hey, Garthy,
don't stop over-talking me.
Garthy Poo, please don't do that to me, okay?
Okay, all right.
You're not going to do it to me. Now he's going to rage quit.
Let's stop being cheeky, Ken. Come on.
Hey,
Praise. Listen,
Praise.
if you don't start moderating, it will be pointless.
Okay, here we go.
Acting extreme. Why do you persist in over-talking me, Ken?
Right. Because you're the one that overtalks everybody else, and then
Praise is like completely inert as a moderator.
Whine about
Ken,
it.
right
Can
today.
we just forget about the past, whatever things, the extracurricular things, just leave that out. This is a discussion about
I understand that.
Vantillianism.
I understand that.
Okay, let's just focus on
Do you
that.
think it's appropriate for you to call me Dorothy Pooh?
Yes, I do.
All the all the things. Oh my god! I want to hear that again.
Let's just focus on.
Do you think it's appropriate for you to call me Dorothy Pooh? Do you think it's appropriate for you to call me Dorothy Pooh? Do you think it's appropriate for you to call me Dorothy Pooh?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Absolutely. Well, because I think you whine too much like a little girl.
Okay. All right. We're done. Praise.
Now, why can't you take that? Why can't you take that and laugh? Why can't you laugh?
Can you mute him while I'm speaking, Ken? I mean, Praise.
Yeah.
So that he doesn't know we're talking. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I was.
Remember the beginning when they joked about Darth demanding of Praise that he mute Dr. Kenny Rhodes? And look what happened. It's not a joke anymore, is it?
I was under the impression that I was going to be talking to somebody who, had academic credentials and was going to be mature-minded. I mean, I haven't been rude with him. I have respectfully disagreed with him. I think I've been nothing fair in trying to walk him through what the Vantillian position, and he just degenerated into a 13-year-old mold right there. So, we're done. Okay.
Well, but I actually have a few questions, if you wouldn't mind answering from the.
If you want to ask me, that's fine. But and this bears no reflection on you, but I am truly shocked at
the antics,
his conduct.
Yeah, his antics are pretty childish.
Okay. I think what was happening there is that the line of reasoning and questioning was getting more and more refined, and he realized he couldn't extradite himself.
Right. So I like that distinction you made there between like you said, there was something that we agree upon, and there's something neutrality. Like you made a distinction there. You caught him there. That's awesome.
So he said that he's familiar and read Van Til, but he made a major blunder there in misrepresenting Van Til. Van Til, by no stretch of the imagination, meant ipso facto an unbeliever cannot know what a cow is, that his next door neighbor doesn't know what a cow is. That's not what Van Til meant. Van Til went to great pains when in his writings, even though he was not the best of writers, to explain that an unbeliever, and I'll repeat myself here, an unbeliever can count, but he cannot account for counting, because counting will require a metaphysic. It will require a model of reality that has certain fundamental parameters which enable one to count. So an unbeliever can and does count, but his claim to count is inconsistent with his metaphysic, right? And so Van Til's point about the cow and other similar related issues is that an unbeliever, by the way, I've read Van Til myself, where there are many unbelievers, even rank atheists, through rigorous study of God's world, including mental introspection about how human beings think, can discover additional truths about God's world. However, their categorization or realm that they have these facts in are nonsensical because they're brute facts. There's nothing that is identifiable or defensible that makes anything what it is, can be, and cannot be. Now, I'm sure you've heard me many times ask unbelievers, since you don't believe in God, what is it that institutes and secures all instances of what is, can be, and cannot be? And for the most part, when they're honest, there's nothing that they can say. Now, when they aren't honest, they'll just lie and they'll say, well, the universe or reality, which is not an answer. So he was misrepresenting Cornelius Van Til.
Yeah, and after this was over, Darth was bitching and moaning about Dr. Kenny Rhodes from room to room to room. Some say that he's still bitching about him to this very day. Till next time.
Thank you, Tom Rabbit.